So we have a question from someone from Facebook. Relentless. Tim Grover talks about your dark side. And cleaners do whatever it takes. I want to know your opinion. What's the line? Ethics, integrity, truth, whatever it takes. The dark side, people perception of intentions and motives, we all have an opinion. So this is what I garner from Tim Grover. Has a book called Relentless. Tim Grover was the coach of Michael Jordan and many other NBA stars. I do remember that chapter. It talks about the dark side. He talks the dark side in the capacity or the context of what Tim Grover says is that cleaners are the individuals that when you need something done, you call them. A cleaner has certain inalienable characteristics that are not going to sway no matter what, and one of them is this dark side. Now, I don't believe that the dark side has any causation analogous to morality or ethics. Okay? It's not a moral conversation or an ethical conversation. It's, according to Tim Grover, these high-producing individuals that he came across in his many years, coaching, had an inner burning, a flame that propelled them to go above and beyond normal limitations, and that this void, almost this dark side, this unquenchable thirst for competition, being the best, call it insecurity, whatever you want to call it, this void, this pit of nothingness was the driving force behind their high performance actions, attitude that got them the results, the acclaim that everyone could see, this facade on the outside of their glamour and the hoorah, and they become these false idols to so many people who don't have this dark side. And the capacity of it wasn't necessarily, my perspective, moralistic or ethical per se, but a deeply rooted void of that was attempted to be filled or quenched through the relentless over competitiveness. And all I can say to this is that I personally am biased to the conversation because a great amount of my bright side comes from a very dark natured void as well, and I would argue that most people that attain something of that we would socially construct as success start their journey through this dark side, through this void, right? With the need for abundance comes from the belief of scarcity, right? It's a false need though. It doesn't exist but in the confines of the mind. And I would argue that where Tim Grover's explanation that the dark side is the highest level of performance, in a sense, is what he makes. His point is that the cleaner is like the highest level of doer. There's a level that I would argue is higher than that. And that would be real truth. Like ultimate power is going to come from a higher level of consciousness than the individual operating out of the dark side. Complete and utter truth is going to come from power that's greater than the individualistic, need for self-gratification, which is an effect of the cause of the dark side. This pit, this void of nothingness that you're trying to fill by being, this insecurity, this pride, whatever, this desire for something outside of yourself that will be greater than your need to get things right now. Like people that coming from the dark side are willing to forego their temporary short-term gain for the long-term success of hopes to fill this dark side. And I don't think it's a moralistic or ethical conversation. I think that a lot of people that are operating from the dark side, a lot of these cleaners that Tim talks about in the book, do operate they may operate in a in an immoral or non-ethical mindset as aligns with cultural societal norms, and I think that has nothing to do with the dark side conversation. I think that there's a lot of people that are misguided, and that those are two different conversations. I don't think it's a moral conversation, but I would say that most people start out very aggressively driven through lower frequency emotions like shame and guilt and fear and anger and desire and pride, and that it's only through either attaining what they think will fill that void or through massive trauma do they see the light of the conversation per se and have the courage to make their life about something other than themselves, which could in turn actually get them a lot more power. And I would argue they actually become more authentic leaders, not just false idols to people that have no fucking power. So yeah, I don't think it's a moral conversation or an ethical conversation. I think there is a lot of truth to the dark side. I can actually have lived that, and a lot of drive does come from that. I think there's a certain level of growth that can take place where an individual can grow to surpass their dark side into something that can be construed as the light. And it's a great question.